What's up, Purdue Nation? It is JT Boiler here again, and today we are going to be looking at who starts for Purdue at quarterback heading into the 2025 college football season. When this video is uploaded, it is July, so summer camp is about to start here soon. This quarterback competition is about to kick off, and it really is going to be kicked into full gear. Spring ball has happened. There were some takeaways from it that we're going to talk about today, but overall, it is still wide open. So we're going to look at our candidates and who I kind of believe has a advantage going into summer ball on getting this job heading into the fall. So when we start off, we have four different players that I really consider as having a shot at winning the starting job in 2025. And the first two here are going to be on my honorable mentions list. We have Bennett Meredith, number 18 there on your left, and then Evans Chuba on your right, number 1. Both, I think, are on the outside of the job currently. They are not the favorites, but they very much so are still alive in the competition. Bennett Meredith is a redshirt junior, 6'3", former 3-star recruit, transferred in Ryan Walters' first year from Arizona State, has played a little bit. Basically has played against Northwestern in his career and then a couple other snaps, but really doesn't have significant game experience or starting experience. He started one game against Northwestern where Ryan Browne later played the majority of that game. For his career, he's 7'11" for 43 yards. Overall, Bennett Meredith is a pocket passer. He is, he's not a statue, but he's not a mobile quarterback. He is more of a traditional quarterback. And reports from spring were actually pretty positive on him in terms of taking care of the ball, operating the offense and stuff, and Barry Odom and co. really like that. However, Barry Odom, Josh Henson, the new OC, are really looking for a more mobile quarterback to add in aspects of the quarterback run here into Purdue's offense. And so for that reason, I do think Bennett Meredith will not end up being the starter, but he's really high quality depth, I think, as a backup or a third string, especially to have on your roster that can go in, operate the offense, not turn the ball over, things like that for you. That is really important to have. On the other hand, our next I will mention is Evans Chuba. Evans Chuba, I think, does have a slightly higher percent chance of winning the job than Meredith does. He is a redshirt freshman coming by the way of Washington State. He was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. He started out being from Canada, moved to Florida to play some high school ball, then went to Washington State and redshirted last year for Jake Dickert. And he has transferred from Washington State into Purdue. He had a connection with new Purdue offensive coordinator Josh Henson, where Henson didn't recruit him to USC, but had scouted him, had talked to him a little bit as USC's offensive coordinator, and decided to use that connection to bring him in here at Purdue. He does not have any career stats, no career game experience, as he redshirted last year. However, he is a pretty high upside player. He is 6'4", he ran a 4.6 40, probably has the biggest arm out of all of the quarterbacks. He has kind of a funky sidearm throwing motion due to an injury that he had in high school where he kind of learned how to throw just by using the side of his arm rather than the full rotation using his shoulder. But he still has a cannon and can really put some speed on the ball. And that was obvious in spring ball. I went to the spring showcase and he easily, especially on some short passes, he can really just flick the ball pretty effortlessly. Not having his feet set or being on the move, and he can really fit the ball into some spaces that way. However, reports from spring camp were that he started off really strong and then kind of slowed down and even had some issues with turnovers, and that kind of slowed his momentum. He has a shot to win it still, though. His momentum, his hype has kind of died off. But that being said, he has a lot of tools, just not a lot of experience. So that's something that, if he could come together, have a strong summer, strong fall, he could see himself in the driver's seat. But ultimately, I don't believe either of these two are probably going to be the starter day one here against Ball State. Our other two options here are Ryan Browne and Malachi Singleton. Ryan Browne, a lot of us Boiler fans will already know, he played a couple of games last year and a couple of games his freshman year. He was a class of 2023 3-star recruit, initially recruited by Jeff Brom, who has a great eye for quarterbacks. And then also after Brom left, still came in and joined the program during Ryan Walters' first year, redshirted that year, but did see the field a little bit, mostly against Northwestern, where he had a really good game rushing the ball, but had 2 interceptions and didn't do all that great passing the ball in that game. Last year, he saw a lot more action, starting 2 games against Illinois, where he had a great game, having over 400 yards and a couple of touchdowns, no turnovers, and then a pretty meh game against Oregon afterwards as a starter. Then he saw a little bit of mop-up time in blowouts as well, but those are the main 2 times we saw him. When we look at his recruiting profile and kind of his size and everything like that, he is 6'4", 210. He started out in Michigan, then went to Florida, then did a prep year in New York, was the number 3 QB in New York, was the Florida 8A Player of the Year, Mr. Football runner-up, then went to New York for a prep school year, had some other small school offers like Kent State, Toledo, Western Michigan, stuff like that, but ultimately Purdue was his main Power 5 offer. That being said, he is 6'4", 210. He has prototypical size. He has the second strongest arm on the team, I would say. We saw last year he has really good running ability as well. Isn't necessarily the fastest guy, but is pretty shifty and also pretty tough at the same time. What we saw in limited action from him last year was generally decent mobility in the pocket, right? Pocket presence, being able to run around. We saw some pretty good reads off of read option game and things like that. That'll be a part of the Barry Odom system. And I thought he did a really good job on quick, short routes and screens and stuff like that. But when he had a little bit more time to process and kind of even he was scrambling and things like that, sometimes we saw some poor decisions out of Ryan Browne, and a little bit more iffy on the accuracy when it comes to medium and deep stuff. However, not bad by any means. He ultimately, when I went back and looked at all of his film from last year, I thought seemed like could be a solid college quarterback. There's a lot of it that I just kind of throw out that he's getting pressured immediately or plays are just getting blown up. But when things were set up for him to have success, he was making accurate throws. He was doing all right with the ball. He had a couple plays that didn't turn turnovers that probably should have been last year when I was watching it back. But ultimately, I think he's a really tough guy. I think he's a guy that has a pretty high ceiling just in terms of being able to run the offense, be a good leader. Guys always liked him in the locker room, both at UNC when he transferred there and also at Purdue before that. And so I think he's got a pretty good shot to win the starting job. The other option is Malachi Singleton. Malachi Singleton is coming to Purdue by the way of Arkansas. And he was a little bit higher touted as a high school recruit. He was a 4-star. He's 6'1", like 220, so he's shorter, but a little bit bigger in terms of just like body and muscles than both Chuba and Brown. And he was a little bit higher rated recruit. Had offers for some really good schools, Georgia, Miami, Louisville, other Power 5 options. He was an Elite 11 finalist. He had a really, really good junior season where he passed for like 3,000 yards, rushed for another 1,000, but then he was hurt his senior season, and ultimately ended up committing to Arkansas, where he redshirted for 1 year, then played as a backup last year, mostly in, I'd say, like the Tennessee and Ole Miss games were the primary times people saw him, and did a pretty good job. So he is another option. Ultimately, probably a little bit better of a runner than anybody else on the roster, and just kind of has pretty good contact balance, lower center of gravity, things like that. Like he's going to fall forward a lot of times, and it's pretty quick. So that's the kind of thing that he has going for him. But ultimately, I do think he is probably the 3rd or 4th weakest arm on the team. Now, I mean, it's a plenty. He can be a college quarterback with the arm he has. I mean, he could even make it to the NFL with the arm he has if you are good at managing the game, good at being accurate and making good reads, right? I'm just saying he's not going to chuck a rocket deep ball all the time. He's going to have to put some air under it, and things like that. And so when we compare our main 2 competitors in my mind, which are the people who have college experience on the roster, which is Ryan Browne and Malachi Singleton, we kind of look at him through this lens, right? Ryan Browne has played 9 games in his career. He has 600 passing yards on a nearly 60% completion rate, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 2 of those coming his freshman redshirt year against Northwestern. 240 rushing yards, but no TDs. And so he has played a good bit more ball. When I compiled all of his snaps from this last year, it was about a 30-minute video, and that's not including the couple of times he played as a freshman, like a true freshman in 2023. And so he has a good bit of game experience, has started multiple games. And if you're a Purdue fan, you probably know what he brings to the table a little bit. Malachi Singleton, on the other hand, has a lot less game experience, right? He has, essentially like a third of the passing attempts that Ryan Browne has, and then like a third or fourth of the rushing attempts, right? So he has played a lot less, but when he did play, he did a pretty good job. Now, 21 to 28 passing, 75% is awesome. 1 touchdown to 0 picks. 17 rushing attempts, 74 yards, and 3 TDs. If you're watching his tape in the red zone, he is an absolute threat to score on a read option, to sort of fall forward through contact and score in the red zone and goal line situations, which is awesome. He actually won the game for them to help them upset Tennessee with a read option in the red zone. I think he is definitely the most proven rushing threat at quarterback. And so that kind of gives him a leg up in some aspects. However, a lot of his time playing came in either mop-up duty or even in blowouts. He played against Arkansas Pine Bluff when they were up like 40, 50 points. Completed a bunch of passes there. And then also against Ole Miss when they were down 4 or 5 touchdowns. And they were playing pretty off coverage, let him get underneath, and he checked it down a lot. But on those checkdowns, on the quick passes, he was really accurate. On the intermediate and deep stuff, once again, kind of hit or miss. So him and Ryan Browne are really kind of similar, I think, in their strengths. I think Ryan Browne is probably a little bit bigger arm, a little bit more developed as a intermediate deep ball passer at this point. However, Malachi Singleton, better runner, higher rated coming out of high school, right? There's all kinds of things going for him. When the transfer portal opened up, he was the first commit to the Barry Odom era, the first quarterback they went after, right? So there's also some inherent things going for him with that. But essentially, I would say this is a primarily two-man race right now between these two, unless Evan Struba can find some way to sneak his way in. Ultimately, I do believe that day one starter against Ball State will be Ryan Browne. I think his edge in potential and experience are going to sort of give him the driver's seat here to be the starter day one. He has a good bit more starting experience at the Power 5 level, playing in actual games. His teammates, he has some experience with wide receivers like Armand Branch and Nylan Morissette already. Devin Maccabee's throwing touchdown passes too. So I think some of that familiarity also does help him in some ways. I also think he has a little more potential. Being 6'4", having a bigger arm, right? Those kind of things do raise his ceiling as a player. And I do think that kind of might give him a upper hand in this competition, and ultimately the buzz. The fact that they brought him back in, right? I know EJ Colson, the quarterback that Purdue brought into the transfer portal, left, and so they had an open spot to bring Ryan Browne in. But with him coming in, just the word around the program, if you've been following media, people online, even On3 and other platforms, just kind of predicting that he's going to be the starting quarterback, you sort of get an idea that there might be people inside that building that are already kind of leaning towards him. But that being said, summer camp is going to start here in a couple of weeks, and there are a lot of practices and a lot of time for this quarterback competition to go down. So that is my thought. I do think Ryan Browne will be the starter day one. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you are with me, if you are against me, if you think something else is going to happen. Let me know. Till then, I will see you guys next time. Always breaking down the Boilers. I will see y'all later.